First of all, I'm Jeremiah. I know most of you, there's a few of you that I don't know. And some of you probably don't know Dr. Williams if you're not in honors college or have taken history too, right? You did history too?
I haven't taught a gen ed history.
Oh, yeah. All right, okay. So you might not have had it if you haven't been in honors class. There's going to be 4 faculty for this trip. Sunny Mangus is our Vice President for Retention, Associate Vice President for Retention. She's not here tonight. She's going on the trip. And then we'll have a 4th faculty member, but we are yet to determine who that will be and that kind of thing. We very much are on pilgrimage just like you are. We're going to be walking and we're going to be experiencing it in the same way that you are, although Dr. Williams and I have both been on pilgrimage a number of times. I've been a number of times. This will be his 2nd pilgrimage on Camino to Santiago. And Dr. Williams has also been an AT guide, and he's got lots of experience leading trips like this. This will be Sunny's first trip like this. She's also an AT hiker. This will be her first Camino. You guys will hopefully get to know us a lot if you don't already know us. But we will be leading pilgrimage to Camino de Santiago this year. So the purpose of the meeting tonight is to kind of orient you guys to what Camino is about, and then hopefully answer some of your questions, probably not all, about the logistics of how you sign up and what you do and all that kind of thing. Hopefully we will be able to get most of your questions answered on that. And then I want you guys to feel free to ask questions all the way through the conversation too. So this can be totally informal. If there's something that comes up as we're going, just wave at me or just holler and let's stop and talk about what is happening. So if you give us that next slide, Kaylee. So first of all, this Camino de Santiago pilgrimage is a spiritual pilgrimage. So what do we mean by that? I think particularly if you are not from a Christian tradition, this may be an important question for you because this is a pilgrimage that is historically Christian. We'll talk about what that means for those who are not themselves Christian in a minute. But what do we mean by spiritual pilgrimage? First of all, a spiritual pilgrimage is a journey to a holy place. So you might think of the pilgrimage to Mecca for Muslims. You might think of the pilgrimage to the Holy Land that many Christians have taken. And pilgrimage throughout the medieval period for Christianity was like the thing. Everybody was going, lots and lots of people were going on pilgrimages across the entirety of the cathedrals in Europe. The Cathedral of St. James became one of the most popular pilgrimages in the medieval times, probably second only to Rome and maybe even bigger than Rome at times. I don't know.
Yeah, 2nd or 3rd to Jerusalem.
Yeah, so I mean, we're talking, this was one of the major pilgrimage routes in medieval Europe, and really experienced a resurgence in the last 40 years or so. We'll talk about that in a second too. Spiritual pilgrimage calls for life transformation. I think this one is an important one because I think this will be the place that holds us together regardless of religious tradition. Because although some of you may not be religious, we're really hoping that all of us will go on a pilgrimage that will call us to change. That we will become better, more whole, more mature people because of this experience. So whether you're a religious person or not, I think we can share that commitment to pilgrimage, that we're going to let this be an experience that's going to grow us. Spiritual pilgrimage is a difficult journey. One of the reasons that you will grow is because it's difficult. So you're going to get to see a bit more of that in a second in a movie that I'm going to show you. But this is not like a super sexy vacation trip. There's a term that hikers use, and Camino's not a hike exactly, but it's kind of like a hike. And there's a term that hikers use called Type 2 fun. Have you guys ever heard that term, Type 2 fun? Type 1 fun is like fun, you know? Like when we say fun, that's fun. Okay? Type 2 fun is not fun when it's happening, but when you look back on it, you think that was awesome. Camino's type 2 fun. There are parts of this that are not fun, but we believe that when you look back on it, you'll think it's amazing.
There's also type 1 fun.
There is some type 1, there is some type 1 fun too.
But there are days that are type 2 days.
Yes.
When you're on Camino.
Yes.
Right?
For sure. Fourth thing, spiritual pilgrimage requires disconnecting from routine. So there's nothing about what you're going to do for these 21 days that's like your normal life. It's a very different kind of existence, which you'll hear in just a moment. But part of the power of this for life transformation is it is a complete disconnect from the way that you do life on a normal basis. It's a class like none other that you're going to take while you're at university. You may choose to fully disconnect from things like social media and phone too. You can choose to not do that. But there are some people that say, I'm leaving the phone at home, I'm leaving my social media accounts at home, and I'm just going to be present on the journey. Plenty of you will not do that, but there will be some that disconnect is in those kind of media terms as well. So go ahead and flip to that next one, Kaylee. Unfortunately, this slide is not very good on the screen that you have here. But the bottom part is the elevation of Camino de Santiago. And that's the left to right is the whole of Camino Frances. And I'll explain what Camino Frances is in a minute. But the first thing to say is you're going to be climbing some mountains. Now they're not this steep, that's only on the elevation profile. But there are some mountains here that I will say will challenge you for sure. We will actually be starting in about the middle of that path. So if you see the map, the yellow lines are some of the other Camino paths. So traditionally, pilgrims would start the pilgrim path from wherever they lived across Europe. But this blue line that goes across through there became one of the most popular routes because if you lived, let's say you lived in Germany, and you were walking from your front door in Germany to Camino de Santiago de Compostela, which would have been, by the way, about 1,500 miles of walking. If you did that, then when you got to the border of France, this is the path you would have taken from the rest of Europe, from the border of France to Santiago de Compostela. So it became the most popular route because many of the people, if you were coming from Italy or Germany or France, you would have taken this route across northern Spain. So lots of the pilgrims who walk Camino de Santiago, if you've ever seen the movie The Way, which may be one of the ways that you guys have encountered it, if not, you should go and watch it. They are walking Camino Frances. It's the most popular of the paths. We're going to start, you see that little bump up in the middle of the blue line, it kind of goes, and then goes back down? That is Leon, okay? You can't see the cities there, but that little bump up blue line is Leon. And we're going to be walking from about there. We're actually going to visit Leon for the first day, and then we're going to take a train ahead to Astorga, which is just across, it's about 2 days walk. We're going to do about 15 minutes of train. But we will walk from Astorga then all the way up to Santiago de Compostela. That's 165 miles in about 15 days. So normal days will be about 12 to 14 miles. There will be some days that are less than that, so it averages out less than 12 to 14. But most of your days are in the range of about 12 to 14 miles of hiking, okay, in the mountains. So if you would throw that next picture up, Kaylee. This is, don't quite start it yet. This movie, I showed some of this trailer in chapel a few weeks ago, but this is a trailer to a documentary, but I think it gives you one of the best pictures into the Camino pilgrimage that I could offer to you, and really kind of gets at the spirit and the heart of what this is about. So let's watch it. It's about 6 minutes. I love that film for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is I think it displays well the spirit, if you will, of Camino, that The best explanation that I can give you is this. Imagine that you've walked so long that your feet are exhausted, you're tired, you come into the town for the day, you sit down in a bar with somebody that you've never met before, and they're from Germany or Switzerland or wherever they're from. And within 5 minutes, you're pulling off your shoes and showing them your blisters. And within 10 minutes, you're talking about your philosophy of life. That's the whole way. And one of the reasons that it's the whole way like that is because the Camino is full of quirky birds like you. It is salt of the earth people. Some of them are carrying harmonicas and think that they're telling you something when they play it. I mean, that kind of spirit of like, it's amazing, wonderful, beautiful people, because that's who goes on this pilgrimage. I love this community that forms so much. In fact, in about 2 weeks, I'm going to Brussels, Belgium, just to hang out for a week with some of my Camino friends from the summer, people that I knew for 2 weeks. I'm going to fly to Belgium and hang out with them for another week, because I just built friendships like that so quickly. You all are going to carry those friendships with you before we start the pilgrimage. You're going to form incredible friendships while you walk, and then you're going to bring them home. And it really is an amazing experience, community for that reason. So, is there anything else? I mean, what else would you say about the spirit of it?
I think there's two aspects of the spirit. I think one of them is the community aspect, right? When you build those relationships with each other, you build them with people that you encounter on the way, and maybe that's a 60-year-old guy, or maybe that's a mother and 2 kids that was on our trip. There was a mother and 2 kids that we just saw every day on the trail, and you're all going in the same direction, so you know. They may stay one town over from you, but the next day you may bump into them very well again. And that's really moving. I think there's an openness about that that's wonderful. And everyone loses pretension, right? It doesn't matter what you do in life, right? What your major is, what you're going to do when you graduate, all those things, like all those questions that sort of define who you are, they all kind of go out the window, right? And instead it's about, being on that journey together. Yeah. But the other part of the spiritual journey, I think, is not the community aspect, it's the internal one. And it showed it, I think probably the closest one was the gentleman who lost his wife, right? And then people go on the Camino, I think, to find themselves in some way, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that finding yourself, you may not even know the question you're wrestling with, or maybe it is some wound you have from the past that you want to find a way to work through and get over. You'll have the space and you'll have the time not to be distracted by your daily life, not to be distracted by your phone, not to be distracted by the 10 papers you have due or something like that, right? Instead, you just have to be with yourself in the footsteps and the next destination.
Yeah, and I would say in particular for those of you that are honor students, one of the things that I noticed on an honor student trip, which we did 4 years ago, was the only time that I've taken. I mean, I've had honor students on every trip, but 4 years ago was when we had an honor sponsored Camino. And having that many honor students really revealed how hard it is for some of you to turn off the academic busy mode. And I think Camino really challenges that in a really good way, because you won't be that by day 6, but you might still be that way by day 5. I won't be that way by the time we get on the plane. But that can be a real challenge. I think it's a gift to some of you that really live in that mode. But as Jim was saying, that I would say the population of pilgrims that you'll meet, you'll have a few different types of people. You'll have a lot of young adults who are doing like gap years and in summer, in between school like you are. There's a lot of people like you. There will be a lot of pilgrims who are either just retired or just experience a loss, divorce, death of a loved one. They're there processing, just sort of managing their own grief. Lots of those folks, and lots of retirees, people who are like 2 years out from retirement, and they're finally able to go to take a trip like this.
They don't have kids to take care of.
They don't have people to
They
take
take
care
2 months off and just go do their own thing.
So lots of those people, and there's lots of people that have other stories too, but those are the most common ones for sure. So there'll be lots of folks like you. Yeah, go ahead and let's talk a little bit about what our particular trip is like. So this first slide is from León, Spain. So when we fly, we will fly probably out of Chicago. That usually tends to be the cheapest, and we're going to try to save as much money on the flight as we can because there's a lot of you going, I hope. And so we'll probably drive to Chicago together. We will then fly from Chicago to Madrid. We will, the same day that we arrive, we will take a train from Madrid to León, about 2 hours, 3 hours to León. León is a town of about 60,000 people, which is a fairly large town in Spain. This cathedral is the centerpiece of the town, but there's amazing stores. León is absolutely my favorite town in all of Spain. I love it. It's amazing. Culture, architecture, art, all of that, all within 400 yards from each other. I mean, it's the center of town is just absolutely amazing. You can see the group that's eating there. The cathedral is actually that kind of white spot in the back. They're literally eating on the street right outside the cathedral. Amazing experience. We'll be there for about a day. Depending on how many of you sign up, it is possible that we'll have the group split into two as far as our walking days, in which case there may be a group that would spend an extra day in León, but probably you'll spend about a day in León, and that's important because our overnight flight will mean that you don't need to sleep. So that is kind of a rest day too, as we kind of reset our biological clocks to an 8-hour time difference, and an overnight flight. So we will not start walking there then in León, though. If you go to the next slide, actually it doesn't show you Astorga. So we'll then take a train to Astorga, Spain that next morning, about 20-minute commuter train, really fast. We'll get off in a town that's known for its Roman ruins that are still there. It's also known as the chocolate history of all of Spain, so we get great chocolate in Astorga. And then we'll begin hiking for the next 16 days. During that 16 days, you're going to have a bit of a pattern that develops. Most days you're going to get up about 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe 7 in the morning. You will begin probably with a light breakfast on your own. What's that? Yes, you begin by packing your stuff up. If you're smart, you pack most of it up the night before. It sucks to pack in the morning. But you'll pack up your bag. Everything that you will have for this 21 days will be in your backpack. That sounds crazy, but it's not as crazy as it sounds. But 21 days in your backpack, carried with you across Spain. We'll talk about how that happens as we get into logistics of it. But you'll pack up your bag in the morning, you'll get a light breakfast probably, and you'll begin walking first thing in the morning. We will not all stay together during the pilgrimage, during the walking. You will need to be within eyesight of another pilgrim in our group, just so that we have buddy system kind of thing. But we're not going to be walking, we're going to be managing you. You're on your own. You're in Spain following the yellow arrows. There are yellow arrows that tell you where to go. You can't get lost. I mean, you could get lost. Which won't be get lost for long. But you follow the yellow arrows all day long with your friends, with new friends, and stop when you want to stop. You'll probably get a second breakfast about 10 o'clock. And then usually lunch, 12 or 1. And then usually we're done walking about 1 o'clock or so, maybe 2. If you're slower, you might walk till 3. Or if you take long. If you stop for Diet Coke at every bar, then you might take a little bit longer, like me. So about 2 or 3 o'clock, you're done walking for the day, and you arrive at a hostel that we've already reserved for you. You'll know where you're going before you set off for the day. We give an itinerary before we ever leave of every place that we will stay. And you'll have an address so that if you couldn't find it, which is possible, more likely that you can find the hostel than that you'll get lost. You'll get in town and be like, where is this? So you have to ask around, which is great because you get to practice your Spanish if you know any. You'll fuddle around if you don't. You'll get to your hostel. Usually you have to do laundry first thing, take a shower. That's one of the ways, by the way, that you get by with 21 days of all in your backpack, is most people will only take 2 outfits, and you wash the one that you wore and put on the one that you didn't wear. And that's how you get 21 days on your back. First thing, you'll get in, you'll do laundry. You'll go out, probably find a bar and drink a beer or wine and have lunch with your friends. And spend a few hours doing that, and then we would have dinner together. We don't all eat together all the time. We may have a few meals that are all together, but normally we would go out to dinner in groups of 6 or 8 in the town that we're in. And then we always have, almost every night, we have a community time at the end, which is a time for us to share stories, a time for us to check in with each other, make sure everybody's doing okay, a time for us to be able to pass word for you about what's happening, and also to pass money. Everybody makes it to the meeting because that's also when you get your money for the next couple days. So everybody makes the meeting. And then for those that want to be able to stay after the meeting, we always have a prayer service, short prayer service after the meeting. Before then we would go off to bed. Usually you're in bed by like 8:30, 9:30, because you're going to get up the next morning and you walk. And I promise you will sleep like a baby, except for when it's snoring. I snore every night, but
don't I know?
Some of us get quarantined. Like some nights I show up and they're like, Jeremiah, your bed's in there.
It was a one bedroom, but we gave it to you.
On day 2, so one of the fun things about this is your very first day out of Storgo, you are climbing one of the biggest mountains of the whole thing. So like day 1,
this is type 2
up the hill. This is type 2 fun. You are going up the hill on day 1. Day 2, you arrive at Cruz de Ferro, which is the picture on the left there. For hundreds of years now, pilgrims have been bringing a stone with them from home that represents the burdens that they carry on Camino. And they leave the stone at the foot of the cross in a kind of ritual of release. Now for you, that's day 2. For many pilgrims, they might have been walking for weeks carrying that stone by the time they arrive there. For you, it's day 2. So in some ways, it's sort of the beginning of our pilgrimage. But it's at the highest point of Camino Frances that you see this cross and this giant pile of rocks where people have been leaving those sort of stones for many, many years. And the truth is, they actually have to drag rocks off of it about twice a year. It just keeps getting built up and built up and built up, and they have to remove material, or it would be insufferably tall because so many pilgrims are bringing rocks. There are about 350,000 pilgrims walked Camino de Santiago in the year before COVID. That was obviously went down for COVID. 350,000 people is a lot of people to be walking the trail. Which is, by the way, one of the reasons that you'll notice that it's almost all hard packed. If it was like dirt, like the trail would have rode away. So it's pretty hard packed throughout because there's a lot of pilgrims walking the path. And that's how they preserve the path. You'll see the picture there of them at the top of a mountain in the valley behind them that they just climbed. That's a pilgrimage group from, I think, 2015 that took that picture. But this is very much what you'll be spending your days climbing mountains together with friends. Probably mad at me because you say I'm lying to you about how high it was. So go ahead and flip to the next one, Kaylee. So this, we already said some of this. A few things that I want you to notice in this picture. Part of it is the terrain. So the picture on the bottom left is what I would say the majority of your walking path is going to look like. This is not a wilderness hike. You're walking on probably somebody's farm road that has been improved for the purposes of Camino. You're walking on a dirt path in and out of towns. You will never go more than about 5 kilometers or about 3 miles between towns. So you're going to see towns on a regular basis. Have resources there, be able to go to the bathroom in their bars, be able to get food and drink and water, all of those things all along the Camino. You do not, like I only carry about 30 ounces of water. That's probably not advised. I've done this a lot. But you might want to carry a little more than that. But you don't need to carry like tons of weight. That's what I'm trying to say. You're not carrying a lot of food, you're not carrying a lot of water. You are packing very light for this. So a lot of the Camino is like that picture on the bottom left on trails, and a lot of the Camino is through towns, through small towns. Those towns could be as many as 50,000 people, like Astorga, or those towns could be population 6. So some of the villages that we go through, when your group walks through, you will double or triple the population of that village. Okay? Some of them are very, very small villages that would not exist anymore except for Camino de Santiago goes through those villages. The top left, you will notice that they are making a presentation about Camino de Santiago, which is a great opportunity to talk to you about the academic work that will be required for the pilgrimage. So all of you, whether you are honors or not honors, will be required to do some journaling that pertains to your own spiritual transformation. You'll be required to write a short paper prior to pilgrimage about what your hopes for the pilgrimage are. You'll have to write journals during the pilgrimage itself, which you'll turn in at the end. And then there's a reflection paper that's due after you arrive, or after you come home. That again is fairly short. And Jim, you want to tell us about the honors curriculum for those who are honors?
Yeah, on the honors side of things, we do have some book reading, some academic reading to do. At least one of those is related to medieval Spain, and Spain being the sort of melting pot in the Middle Ages of the different religions, of Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And so part of what we're exploring with that is understanding how the Camino de Santiago came to be, why St. James' resting place became a rallying cry for Christians to travel to in the first place, and how we see that in both the imagery that we find along the path and in some of the things that we encounter on the journey. That reading we do before we go on Camino, so that's a good heads up that, and I haven't figured out the logistics on it yet, but it may be that over, for instance, spring break, you read the book and then we'll come back and have a discussion on it as a group, or turn the paper. But yes, yeah, and we've also done it during the finals week or the Monday before we leave, have a meeting. So, yeah. Yep.
And so the other piece of that then, and he and I have not talked yet, and we probably won't make this decision until we know how many pilgrims we have, about how we will assign one of the other assignments, which is you all are our tour guides for the pilgrimage. So all along the Camino, there will be students making pilgrimage or making presentations on what you will see the next day. So they're making a presentation on the Astorga Cathedral while sitting on the steps of the Astorga Cathedral. So that will happen all along the way. It's possible that those assignments will only be for honor students or only for non-honors, or we'll just have to figure out what we're going to do depending upon how many students we have. But some of you will be making presentations like that, researching and presenting to the group. So next slide, Kaylee. The top left picture is just showing you that we're going to hang out with castles. You can see everybody's just like lounging in the sun next to a beautiful Knights Templar castle. On the right-hand top picture, you'll notice just one of the mountain views. It's just tremendous. This is the purple flowers covering the mountain, because when we go in May, the flowers are all in bloom. The spring flowers are in bloom, and it's absolutely amazing. On the bottom left is some of the food. So to talk about that a little bit, much of the food that we will eat is fairly simple food. You can choose to eat off the more extravagant menu if you want. And actually it wouldn't cost you that much more if you're not going to eat a lot off those menus. But what a lot of people do is eat the pilgrim menu, which is usually a meat, potato, a simple vegetable, and it's a lot of calories, like a lot, and a little dessert. Every meal is served with wine and beer. And that's a part of the pilgrim meal. There's lots of seafood in the area that we're going in Galicia, so if you're a seafood fan, lots of fresh seafood. Chicken and pork are everywhere all the time. Spain are very, very proud of their ham and their pork and their sausages. So eggs everywhere. If you are vegetarian or you are gluten-free, it is a challenge. It can be done, but it is a challenge because the Spanish, they're a little bit better. I mean, let me say this: vegetarian is fine. Vegan is a little tough. So if you're anybody who's vegan, let's talk so that you know what you're to get yourself into. We had a vegan on the last honors trip, and she just stopped asking. She was like, I don't really want to know sometimes. She's like, I don't want to know what's in your bread, just give it to me, so they're not as attentive to some of those needs as we are in the United States, and so you may want to just plan to be flexible. There's a lot of flour and gluten in their meals, but they do understand gluten allergies and they will take care of you, but just know that it's a little harder to eat, and because we're eating in their restaurants and bars. We aren't preparing any of the food. I mean, you could eat out of the groceries if you wanted, but that's not normally how we're eating. But on the right-hand side is the albergue stay. So most nights you'll be staying in a bunk dorm that has between 4 and 40 beds, depending on where we are, all in the same room. Most of them, there's probably like 12 to 14 beds in the same room. It's all going to be co-ed for the most part. The bathrooms are almost all divided by gender. Some of them are also co-ed, but you just have different times that you're in there. On that, if that is a bit concerning, you should know that for the most part, every albergue that we stay, we will be almost the only people there. So frequently we would have 30 beds and there's only 36 in the whole place. So usually we kind of take over because we're such a big group. That may be more true this year for a variety of reasons. But it is tight quarters, and these places are clean and comfortable, but it's tight quarters in the albergues. Anything else we should say about that?
Just say there's not much time that's actually spent in that's room in the albergue. So like you come in, you do your washing, most people go back out and see the town in some way or find a place to hang out for a while. And so the time in the albergue that you're actually awake in the evening is usually on the lower end of the scale. Where you're outside the albergue where there's sort of more space to do things. So it's mostly just about bathing and sleeping.
Yeah, probably 75 to 85% of your time will be spent outdoors. Pretty much the only thing you do is sleep indoors, unless it's raining. We eat outside, we hang out outside, you're outside. That's how Spain does life.
COVID friendly.
It is very COVID friendly in that sense. Yes.
Yeah, a good way.
Yeah, in a really good way. Go ahead and do the next one, Kaylee. So, destination is Santiago de Compostela. This is the cathedral where we are walking. Some believe that the remains of St. James are there. There's a reliquary in the basement of the cathedral where people make homage to St. James. It's traditional that pilgrims would come to a pilgrim mass that takes place every day. That is a multilingual mass. There'll be like 15 priests that co-celebrate the mass, and they'll be from 6 different nations and then 6 different languages for the masses.
And all are welcome.
All are welcome, absolutely, yeah.
You don't have to be a Christian in order to go to the mass.
In fact, it's probably a good moment to say the vast majority of pilgrims are not religious today. They talk religiously while they're on Camino, but most of these are not particularly religious people because they're mostly Europeans, and Europe is not a very religious place anymore. And so the exception there would be the Italians and the Spaniards still are predominantly Catholic, and the Italians and Spaniards are big parts of the Camino. Many of the Americans are Protestant. That would be where mostly the Protestants would come from, but and some of the Northern Europeans too. But while there's a lot of religious talk on Camino, certainly it is not even a majority of those persons are religious, which is a good moment to talk about the resurgence of Camino. Camino was basically dead in 1980. There were 12 pilgrims that walked the Camino in 1979. Okay? So the resurgence of Camino started in the 1980s and 90s. After about 2000, it became a every religion thing. It grew so popular in the 2000s that it wasn't just Christians anymore that were walking the pilgrimage. And now, when you have 350,000 people, there are people of all stripes. So, yeah, after we arrive in Santiago, we'll go. Okay, I don't know what the next picture is. Go ahead and put that up. Okay, we'll talk about that in a second. After we arrive in Santiago, we will then take probably a bus back to Madrid. Train back to Madrid, and then we'll probably spend a day sightseeing in Madrid. I'm giving probablys there because there is a slim chance that we would have to skip the Madrid part and fly directly from Santiago to home if COVID regulations make it really bad for us to hang out in Madrid. I don't expect that to be the case, and I'll tell you why in a second. But I just want you to know we want to go to Madrid so you guys can hang out and have a touristy day, but it is possible that we could have to skip Madrid. So go ahead and go over that COVID precautions day, and then we'd have to fly off to Madrid the next day. COVID precautions, before we get to those, I should say that Spain is currently at over 80% vaccinated. Now that we have children getting vaccinated, I suspect that Europe will begin vaccinating children within weeks or months, probably before May. When we get there, children will begin vaccinated. And as soon as children are vaccinated, Spain will be over 90% vaccinated in no time. So the only people that are not vaccinated there are people that have medical exemptions, basically. Everybody's doing it, and because of that, the incidence of COVID is very, very low already, and it probably will get even lower, unless some weird variant defeats the, there's something weird happens. But if the trend right now is that COVID is going to be a very healthy situation in Spain, and most of the people who come to Spain right now are vaccinated. So therefore, even the tourists will, for the most part, be protected. For our trip, all of you will be required to be vaccinated if you want to go on Camino. There will be no exemptions for that. And plain and simple, there's no exemptions. So Spain probably will not have exemptions. And we're not going to know that until, maybe. Things can change from week to week, literally. So we're all going to need to be vaccinated. Without any medical or religious exemptions for the vaccination. We will plan to purchase refundable airline tickets in February. Either refundable or insured airline tickets in February. That will be the only financial risk that you will have prior to us leaving. Because there's always a possibility that a trip could get canceled at any time during COVID world. Okay, Jim and I were supposed to be in Rome a week before this whole thing started. And Emma. We were supposed to be in Rome a week before this thing started, and we got our plug pulled like 5 days, 9 days before we got to go. So it could happen again. We feel pretty good about it this year, but certainly it could get squashed. If it did, from February on, we will have a ticket that has some sort of refundable feature to it. The airline policy on the ticket will determine what you get back. So if it's fully refundable or if it's insured or whatever their policy is will determine what you get back on that. The rest of the money would be refunded to you 100%. Okay? So that is the only thing that we have to purchase prior to leaving is the airline ticket. The rest of it we can get the money back. If we were to be quarantined in country, which absolutely could happen, if somebody comes COVID positive, even if they're asymptomatic or whatever. Right now, as of November 8th, actually, the U.S. is not requiring testing to get back in the country. We're accepting that probably we could end up being required to be tested to come back in the country. And in that case, we could end up getting stuck with some sort of quarantine. We will bear the cost of that with some emergency funds that we have if we were to get quarantined and have to stay over. But just know that will not even be determined by us probably, that'll be determined by the Spanish government. So we'll follow whatever regulations they tell us. I am confident that you all, as young adults who are vaccinated, if you become COVID positive, I don't think we're going to have any problems. They have a great medical system. You get the care that you need in Spain, but
plus everyone will be vaccinated.
Everybody's going to be vaccinated. I really just think, even if anybody were to be positive, it's going to be pretty low risk, but it could still get us stuck there. Even if nobody's not that sick, it could still get us stuck.
Right, and so that's the thing that we've talked about in our planning, the thing that you should bear in mind. We're all planning to be, we'll all be planning to be back in the United States at the next date, but there exists the possibility that that could be delayed for one or more persons if there's a breakthrough COVID case and we're required to do testing before we get home and that person comes up positive, right? So everyone at least needs to have an open enough mindset that even though we're planning to go and be back at a certain date, that we have to have some flexibility because we're all subject to things outside our control. A great lesson to learn while you're on Camino.
There'll be lots of things outside your control. And I should also say, whether one of you or 30 of you were to get quarantined and not be able to travel, you would have a faculty member staying in Spain. We're not leaving any of you there to fend for yourself. You're coming home with us. Okay? And then finally, we will follow whatever Spain's regulations are with regard to masking, testing, etc. You should know that Spain got devastated by COVID at the beginning of this thing, and the Spaniards are very, very cautious. And I will expect everyone to respect that while we're there. When I was there in July, I just went back in July. As soon as they opened up the country, I bought a ticket, went and walked for a couple weeks, and when I was there in July, they had the mask outside regulation lifted for months, like maybe 3 months when I got there, and still everybody was wearing their mask outside as well because they were devastated and they all knew people that they lost and they take these regulations seriously.
They didn't live in a state of denial.
They did not live in a state of denial, and it did not get politicized. However, in the albergas, the rules might become not as stringent. But for us, as well as the pilgrims that I saw, none of them were wearing a mask in the albergas. So, just so you know. It probably would be unmasked people in the hospitals. Even though technically they're supposed to be going. Last slide, please, Kaylee. Important dates to remember. Okay, so you do not need to write these down right now. What you do need to write down is jeremiahgibbs.com/UNCamino, because all of those dates are on the website. Okay, but first deadline, December 1. We believe that there are going to be a lot of you interested in this trip. We believe that after December 1, there probably won't be any room left on the trip. So if you want to go, get your application in by December 1, and you can decide later whether you're actually going. But December 1 probably will be drop-dead deadline for applications. If we have any spots open after that, we'll fill it. But I fully expect that there will not be any other applications after December 1. Dr. Williams and I will get together quickly after that, decide where we are on whether we're going to need to do interviews or anything kind of like that, whether it be a highly selective. We are not expecting this to be selective. We expect that if you want to go, you'd be able to go, but we are reserving the possibility that that could happen. So just so you know that there will be a selection, and then we'll try to get that word back to you as soon as we can. So I'm saying like December 8th, but that will somewhat determine whether he and I are able to get together in a timely way and process that. But I'm currently saying that the deadline then for your deposit will be December 20. Okay? So there'll be a $200 non-refundable deposit, non-refundable except for COVID cancellation, but not refundable otherwise. That will be due on December 20. If you can't make the deposit on December 20, then we would just need to have a conversation about what you're going to do. Are you making decisions still? That kind of thing. But that will be our first deposit deadline. The first major payment would be an $800 payment due on February 11. The final payment due would be your balance, whatever your balance would be, on April 15th. Okay? Probably many of you will not have much of a balance by April 15th for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons will be Greyhound Adventure grants are due February 1. Greyhound Adventure grants is a competitive grant process where you will make the case that you are going to grow spiritually, vocationally on this pilgrimage, and ask for the Greyhound Grant Committee to support the pilgrimage. In a normal year, about 1/3 of the applications are successful, and normally a Camino grant would be in the neighborhood of $600 to $700. Okay, I think that will be more successful than 1/3 this year, because I think there'll be less applications. But I don't know that. That's my belief, is that more than 1/3 of you that apply would be given a grant. Some of you have some other opportunities to be able to get funding. United Methodist Youth Leader Scholars. My staff has some opportunities and so on. And then many of you that are honors college, Dr. Williams will tell you what that process is.
Yeah, the honor students, there's several opportunities. One of them, spring term grants, we'll probably have them due around February 1st. We just named a committee for that. The faculty just likes that. We give out four students get a grant up to around $3,000 to cover the cost of the trip, to cover the cost of the Camino, and that's usually fully funded. And if there's any leftover money, we get a foothold permit as well. That's open to all honor students for any spring term trip. And then in addition to that, because this is the honor sponsored trip, we use our endowment funds to pay for that. So we will have a minimum subsidy that every honor students get in going on the trip. And then we pay out higher amounts based off of your progress through honors. Additionally to that, we'll have diversity grants that we'll hand out and a student-based need grant that we'll hand out. And so lots of different funding opportunities to help bring costs down.
And you can't give them a firm number, but can you give them a range of what they might expect?
Range would be all the way up to covering the full freight, especially for like the diversity grant or for the need-based grants. For the subsidy, the floor should be $500 for every student. But the matrix for how it works out really depends on how many people we end up taking and the composition of the folks who are involved. So,
And I should say,
one fixed pot of money, and figure out how to distribute it once we know how many there are.
exactly right, yeah.
Yep.
There is one other grant possibility that is not 100% yet, but I'd say it's 92% sure, which is we have a donor that wants to give to a STEM student for them to be able to go on Camino, and that would be almost the entirety of the cost. I don't know exactly how much it'll be, but I will know soon probably whether we'll have a grant, almost full grant for a STEM student.
Graduate. We went on the Camino,
Yeah.
had a life transforming
Yeah.
experience.
Absolutely.
And a former
Yeah.
honor student too.
Yeah, a pilgrim that her life was changed, and she says she wants to create that for somebody else who is still a student. So lots of opportunities. I will say one of the tricky things is that you're going to probably have to commit before you're going to know how much you're going to get. So that's just the dynamic of it, and then you're going to figure out where you're going to get that funding. Cost, we didn't give an amount yet, did we?
No.
So the cost, right now we are saying $2,600 for the fee for the trip. That includes your airfare, food, drink, lodging. We believe that $2,600 is everything you're going to need, including books actually. I don't know about the honors books, but the books, the books that's for the rest of the class, the non-honors books, that will actually be included in your cost as well. So we really believe that it's pretty much an all-inclusive cost of $2,600, except two items. Passport if you don't have one. So it's $135 for a passport. But you're going to need that anyway because you're going to travel a lot. And then the second thing is your equipment for the pilgrimage. We say that you should plan to budget about $600 for equipment. That not everybody's going to need to spend that for a variety of reasons. Some of you already have the kind of clothing, especially the women, seem to all have the kind of workout clothing that you need to take anyway. The men, some of them don't. But the clothing, a lot of you probably have in your closets what you would need to be able to take. You will have a list for that on my website of what you should expect to take. The most expensive items may be able to be borrowed, especially backpack. You probably are not going to wear it after this, so go borrow it from somebody, and I may have some past pilgrims who would be willing to share their backpack with you for the week, 3 weeks. And so probably the one thing that you're not going to be able to cut a corner on is you got to get good shoes, and those can be expensive. But otherwise, there's ways that you can cut corners.
These are
on
good
this.
shoes, like $150.
Yeah, like your shoes would probably cost you at least $100 to $150 to get the right shoes, and I'll explain what the right shoes are and stuff. But unless you happen to be a cross-country runner and already have trail runners, you might already have. But most of you are probably going to buy trail runners, which are what cross-country people would wear for their running.
And we would strongly encourage you to ask family members for gifts.
Oh, thank you.
To pay heading into the holiday season or birthdays or whatever it is, ask them to give you equipment. Pass up on some of those other things that you're thinking about would be nice for the holidays and ask for those things. The other thing is that if you put in your application on December 1st, hopefully we'll be mindful of doing this to remind you immediately, but you should go ahead and apply for a passport. The U.S. Passport Office at the moment managed my renewal pretty rapidly.
Some of them are coming fast.
4 weeks.
Some
of them are coming very slow. And the last thing we want to do is have you paid up, have you trained, have you educated, and you can't go on the trip because you don't have your passport yet. Like that would be soul crushing. So as soon as you apply December 1st, you should put in your passport application.
And if you have any problems with that, we'll help you figure that out. It's not complicated, but it is.
Yes, very important. You cannot go on the trip without it. Just like you can't go on the trip without a vaccine. And on the vaccine, you'll need your vaccine.
You will need your card, yeah, your vaccine proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be required to go online. My suggestion, Jim already mentioned the Christmas thing. I have an Amazon list of all items that you need. I would suggest that you create an Amazon registry, because that's a super easy way for people to see the specific items that you want. Just like if you were doing a bridal registry or something. At Christmas, a lot of cohorts get basically all their stuff from Christmas gifts, because somebody's going to want to support you, and there are items everywhere from $10 to $200 that are needed, so a lot of people get help with that. What questions do you have? That's a lot of talking. Jared.
Does it rain a lot, or is it always hot?
Great question. Galicia in May rains about 18 days out of May. So that does not mean that you will get rain though. There have been some pilgrimages where we get rain the whole time. What was it like when you were there? I don't remember.
It rained a couple of days, but not bad.
There are, last Camino I did with students, we had 33 degrees and hails for more than an hour. 33 degrees Fahrenheit and hail. There are no hail at 33 degrees Fahrenheit Celsius.
There was one day on our pilgrimage on the first one, and I can't remember it. I don't think it was, I think it was Osa Guerrero, but it was frigid.
So because it's May, weather's unpredictable, it could be fairly cold. I have experienced, in May, I've experienced temperatures down to 30 degrees. I've not experienced it colder than that. But it could get all the way down to 30. I've also experienced temperatures of like over 100 degrees Fahrenheit in May. So it can span
Layers.
Layers, yeah.
Layers.
In fact, this was not during May, this was in July. But I experienced 30 degrees and 97 degrees within 48 hours of each other one time. It was on France side, but it was still in July. But yeah, anyway. Other questions? Yes.
At the beginning of vaccines, the validity of the CDC card for questions is accepted internationally now, or is there like a different vaccine coverage on here?
You're talking about the paper card that you got
The one
there.
that has the CDC.
Yeah. Airlines are not, or the TSA is not, I guess it's the airlines checking it. It's not that stringent. If you have your card and you have your vaccine, you're not going to have a problem. They hardly checked it, actually. They did check it, but it was not even, there was no inspection of the document at all. It was just like, we got it, we're good. But you will have to have the card. This.
What's the highest elevation?
1,700 meters, I think. So whatever that is, 5,000? It might be 4,500 somewhere, yeah. That's about right. Feet, yeah, 4,500 feet, and, 1,600. Yes.
I know you said something about like passing out a certain amount each day. I guess that's for like food and whatever. Is there also like a certain amount that you suggest that people bring that's like additional spending money? I'm guessing like you wouldn't suggest getting a whole bunch of souvenirs because you're carrying everything, but.
Yes, so you're not going to want to buy any souvenirs until you try
get
to
to Santiago.
Okay.
Because anything you buy, you'll have to carry.
Yeah.
And
So you won't want to buy
including
anything.
create yourself.
Yeah. So when you get to Santiago, you can buy your souvenirs. When you get to Madrid, you can buy your souvenirs. I would say my suggestion to you on money is I don't think you need to budget to have any additional money, but you probably do want to have money in an account for emergency, because first of all, you may just decide to spend more money than what I am giving you each day. right? What I budgeted for you. You may decide to spend more. Or you may decide to do some shopping. When we get in Madrid, the place that we stay is like a quarter mile from an amazing shopping district, like amazing. So you may like want to just fill up your wardrobe, but then you would need to have money for that. But just generally, if you're not planning on spending like that, if you have $100 in your ATM card accessible to you, that's probably enough for your emergencies. Because we're going to be giving you roughly about 25 euros, which is about $30, give or take, every day. So about 25 euros a day for your food and some of the housing I'm paying out of my money, and some of it bad yours, but 25 euros a day is kind of your budget, and that's plenty of money. I mean, you drink a lot of beer and wine for 25 euros. Yes?
Are you going to explain to us how to do all of the ATM card and everything?
Absolutely, yes. So that's totally yes. So we're going to have about 4 meetings in the spring. Those will be walking meetings, so we will go to a park somewhere like Fort Bend or Brown County or something like that, and we'll do training hikes so you get a feel for what it's like to walk 10 miles in a day. And during those hikes, we'll go over things like money, gear, how to fit a backpack, how to choose one, all that kind of stuff we'll be talking about at those meetings.
Yeah, at least 1 or 2 of those will have you pack everything you think you can take on the trip. So you get a chance to experience what it's like on your back for several miles. So that then you can make the right choices of, do I really need this? And you'll find that very quickly your calculus changes once you start carrying it around.
And the other piece of that is I have a YouTube channel called Camino Guide, and I have more than 50 videos that help people prepare for Camino. You guys can check them out. You'll have my opinion on what to do on these things. Yes?
For a non-honors individual, can we still do like the readings and all that?
No, you're forbidden to read.
Or like,
God, I would never stop you from reading something. Or if you wanted to join in the conversation, you would be welcome to. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and the reading, the one book that the honors folks will be are using the same book. So
Yeah, and I did 2 last time.
Yeah.
I did El Cid, and then I did I can't remember the name of it. It's the Jewish Christians and Muslims. And
There's one about the Jewish Christian Muslim exchange in that very credential, which is really important from a critical perspective. If you want to think critically about like how does religion play into all this, there are some pretty nasty motivations for how Camino develops in the beginning part of it. Like it's not all clean history, and I think that's important for us to know as we make those too. So, yeah. Other questions? Yes.
do you have rough estimates of dates? Or like a rough estimate of when you leave?
Oh yeah, thank you. So
It's on the website.
it's on the website, but the plan is May 10 to June 2nd. That could shift by a day or so, so leave some allowances on either side. But May 10 to June 2nd is the plan. So it's 22 days. 15 of those are walking days, 2 are travel days, and 3 are.
Yeah, and one important note, it does cover the traditional spring term at UIndy, but it also spills over into semester 1 for summer.
Yes.
So if you're planning on taking classes semester 1 and doing this trip, you couldn't do that. You could take summer classes in summer session 2, but not summer session 1.
Yes. Unless it were a fully online.
You would.
I have taught an online class while walking through.
God. The Wi-Fi was that reliable?
What's that?
I said the Wi-Fi was that reliable? Must have improved.
Yeah, the internet is much better than most of it. Yeah, internet's actually excellent there.
Used to be awful.
Yeah.
Like, you have to get to your destination early so you can actually get Wi-Fi.
Before everybody got there.
As soon as like 8 pilgrims got there, just like tanked and no one could get anything.
Other questions? Yeah.
As a student who's going to graduate in May, how would I work for?
Good question. So if you're not honors, you can choose whether you would take the class or not if you are graduating in May. If you are honors and you want the honors money, you have to take a class.
Correct.
That's correct.
Yep. And you can still enroll as a senior and you're graduating, you can still enroll in spring term.
Yes.
So would I need to change my application date for graduation to August?
Do you need those 3 credits for graduation?
No.
Okay, then no. If you needed them for graduation, then I think they'd still have you walk, and then you would get your diploma until you return. But if you don't need it for graduation, they'll give you your diploma and you'll be graduated and it's not a thing. So, good question though, because you're not really a student anymore at that point, but you're just going to take that one. Yes. I mean, it wouldn't hurt, but I don't think there's going to be any demand on that because it's like Europe's not even doing first years. If they do them, then we might be required. Could change. Maybe it could change at all.
Are you asking if you're required to, or whether you should?
If we're required, is it going to be heavily recommended?
Right now, the CDC guidelines are written as such that you probably do not qualify unless you're working in a service-oriented profession. So, or have a job that is service-oriented. So you may be able to be qualified for an extra booster. I would say if you qualify for the booster, go ahead and get it. You just reduce the risk that you might contract a breakthrough case that would maybe set you behind from being able to get home, or potentially sabotage you before you can even get over there. So anything you can do to reduce the risk, from that would be great. But at this point, no, there's no requirement.
Yeah.
Jeremy and I didn't talk through the booster scenario, so I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer on that is we're doctors, but we're not that kind of doctor. So we're going to tell you to do what the CDC and what the university requires. So now he does have to have a brother who's
He was a physician.
has a infectious disease specialist. But we are not that kind of doctor. So yeah, we're going to tell you to do whatever the CDC is going to say to do. That's the short of it.
I'm triple vaccinated at this point. I'm super boosted.
Other questions?
So does this count for spring term?
Yes, good question.
So
So
does this count for spring term?
Yeah, it's spring term.
Yep.
So this is kind of, I should have covered that earlier, I appreciate the question. So it's spring term class, okay? It is your experiencing cultural differences gen ed, which seniors might have had that called something different. That should share it. Okay, I asked the registrar, but that's okay. We can go back. Yes, we'll make sure.
GCC are in the same.
Yeah.
Some of them are grandfathered.
These things change all the time, so.
It will be
experiencing cultural difference. We
We may have to do some legwork on the back.
And if you are a Spanish major or minor, there's credits towards the major or the minor. You should talk with Spanish faculty about it. I don't actually understand how it gets credited. But if you are a Spanish major or minor, I think it counts as a cultural elective or something like that.
I didn't answer that when I went, because I went on Peru pre-COVID forever ago, but it just goes into your elective credits for your Spanish degree, which is your minor or your major. And so you can use that for your, to like kind of count for your back credit, you don't have to do that or anything like that.
And for honor students, you get honors credit as well. So it counts as a 3-credit course.
This is counting for more than most spring terms do. Spring terms usually don't count for anything except for spring term, and sometimes experiencing cultural difference. But this one's got all kinds of things added on.
Something a big red.
Boom! Other questions? So, if you start to think about all the details, there are endless details on this thing, okay? Because it's like, you've never been on a trip like this before, so there's a lot of questions about it. Don't hesitate to ask the questions. Dr. Williams has been there. I've been there 7 times. This is my 4th student trip that I'm leading. We can answer your questions. They're all fairly simple, honestly. But they don't seem simple from where you're sitting.
We're also having a conversation follow-up scheduled for next Friday at 2 o'clock.
And we'll have coffee and stuff.
So if anyone wants to come back by and finds they've thought about it some more and wants to ask some more questions, we'll be available.
Don't hesitate to check out my YouTube thing or the website. Awesome. Thanks, guys.